Okay, so we keep going with this summer course on culture and European identity. And we come back to Izabella Agardi, research fellow at Iask, who is to talk now about memory and populist politics in Central Europe and beyond. And you advanced that it will be also a strong presentation on some topics, so looking forward to hear you. The floor is all yours.
Okay, good afternoon. So I am going to talk about the aforementioned topic, but because we are nearing lunchtime, I figured I would also bring up a case study, or basically two case studies, which would visually convey the message that I would like to get through to you. In that sense, I am going to connect to the previous talk because I will be also talking about the appropriation of space, public space, by political regimes. Actually, I can connect to Dimitar in the sense that a few years ago I was studying the transformation of Budapest in late 19th century, and it's a fascinating topic to see how an emerging empire and one of its capitals want to legitimize its dominance by resorting certain ways in which they use the past, and they want to put an imprint on the public spaces and the buildings that are in those public spaces. This has a connection to symbolic power. This has a connection to regimes legitimizing themselves and rewriting the history of the community that they are ruling over. And that always means the necessity to reconceptualize and redraw the boundaries of the community, and also the past, its past. So such projects of city renewal and appropriation of urban space are abound in Hungarian history and in other histories of other Central European capitals. One of the first case studies that I would like to show you, though, is a recent one. It's an iconic building that was taken over in 2000 and turned into a memorial museum, and which was opened in 2002. Whoever has visited, which of you have visited Budapest before? Yes? Okay, then maybe you know what I'm talking about. It's called the House of Terror. A fascinating place. A fascinating place of commemoration of and of a particular theatrical usage of Hungary's recent past. The building itself was taken over by the Arrow Cross Party in 1944 and was called the House of Loyalty by the Szálasi party members. And then later on it was appropriated, taken over by the communist secret police, and it established its headquarters there in 1945. And it was a place, it was a house. Actually, before this, it was a building where families used to live. It's on the Andrássy Road, which is a great avenue in Budapest, and it's a very it was an aesthetically very beautiful building originally. So. But then the Hungarian Communist Secret Police took it over, and they used it until 1963. And it was a place of bodily torture and lots of interrogations. And they kept political prisoners in the basement. Even though we have the sense when we visit this place now that it was also a place where people died. They actually did not carry out executions in the building, but the museum kind of plays that up as well for the visitors to see. So this was a $20 million project. It's huge amounts of money. It was government money, and it was when Viktor Orbán first formed the government that they thought, okay, time has come to finally create a place of free memorialization of all the tortures that Hungary has gone through in the 20th century, meaning the Nazi occupation and the communist regime. So that's the basic mission of the museum, to commemorate the horrors caused by these two regimes. It also has another mission. It positions itself as something of a moral compass. So it's not just to let's remember together of all the victims that perished, but let's teach the masses. Let's give them a moral education about dictatorship, about how terrible undemocratic regimes can treat the masses. Okay, wanting to position itself as a moral compass against which Hungarian society can position itself. As you see, it occupies the whole corner of Andrássy, and I guess it's Vörösmarty Street on the other side. And it's what you don't see here is that there's this blade wall. There's here, and also on the other side a black blade wall that separates this building from all the rest. There was a lot of discontent actually producing these blade walls. People really did not like to have this building put in their faces. People, locals, with the words terror written on it. They designed it as such that at noon the sun shines through the cutouts, and it says terror on both sides. Okay. Getting back to my notes. Yeah, thank you. The director of the museum and many of the people that were comprising the team that designed the museum and run the museum We know, because they are public figures now. Even the person who composed the music for the halls is a famous Hungarian pop musician, Ákos Kovács, who used to be the frontman of Bonanza Banzai, a band in the late 80s, which were kind of like a Depeche Mode kind of like black pop music, which was very trendy at that time. And Ákos was a graduate of Corvinus University. He was also in the circle of friends of the current prime minister. Okay, this is just so you have somewhat of an imagination about who get into the position of shaping representation of memory in such project sometimes. Okay, so let me just go back a little bit to 1989 and the sort of recovering of memory, because there's this recovery of memory discourse which was coined by Pierre Nora for the countries of the former bloc, Soviet bloc, meaning that so the 40 decades of socialism was an oppressive regime which suppressed all authentic memory. And when it was gone in 1989, there was a vacuum first, which allowed all the suppressed authentic memories to surface. So that was memories that were finally, the public discourse, the public space was opened up for a diversity of memories. And it was something to be dealt with in that climate. Even after World War I, there was a challenge to remember, because World War I was a huge upheaval in itself. Afterwards, it posed a challenge: how to remember it, how to commemorate it, what kind of memory sites should we build. After the Holocaust, everything, all the signifying systems changed, the codes of representation changed, a new language of representation needed to be figured out, and also a new vocabulary was necessitated, and also a new system of international justice. So, new ways of commemoration. We, again, can see how even the genres may change, but there are continuities that memory makers resort to from the past, and they can pick up elements of it and use to shape a certain narrative of the past, a certain image of the past, and visualize it. Okay. So while in the 19th century the nation state was the dominant producer and caretaker of memory and history, using the past to unite a people around a common identity and a set of political objectives, the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century sought an even greater hegemonic control over the past in the service of their ideological goals. I did another piece of research about the Budapest International Fairs and the history of Budapest International Fairs, which were spaces where companies could offer their goods. They were international, so international companies would come, set up their booths. Also, the space would be designated and designed to show progress, mostly technological and industrial progress. The way the genre of representation has changed throughout the first half of the 20th century. By the time we got to 1948, the newly elected Hungarian Communist Party really fervorously started to organize the new Budapest in the international fair. So in that fair, imagine a country just 3 years after the war, not even, with its capital being reconstructed, with its industrial production and economy being in horrible shapes. Inflation was through the roof, and they had to find a way to represent the newly elected communist government in this fair that it would be promising. So they had to create a genre of representation which would create a utopia, a socialist utopia, where they actually put on display whatever that wasn't there. They had to project the future. So in a sense, I can again relate back to Dimitar, because the Belgrade Waterfront project is either you recourse to the past or you recourse to the future. That was a very futuristic project, and this fair, even though it was very small, it was in the city park, still it aimed to create some kind of magical, futuristic lands of abundance, and arrows were pointing upwards, and production measures were wonderful, and there were nothing to show. So this is the greatest paradox of the history of the fair that I came across. So, but coming back to the House of Terror, this is a different way of legitimizing the newly elected government and their status. So, but because this was in a certain memory field or memory culture in the public space that was there in the 90s of Hungary, this had a specific significance, and it had to be done in a certain way to close the discourse. After the 90s, the memories abounded, too much memory, they said. Let me just say, Havel said, "The fall of communism destroyed this shroud of sameness, and the world was caught napping by an outburst of the many unanticipated differences concealed beneath it," which came with a lot of stories, a lot of personal accounts of suffering, and of difference. Okay. Soon I will show you pictures of the museum. But first, what the director, Maria Schmidt, who is a historian, said what she wanted to achieve. So for her, the primary impetus behind the creation of the House of Terror was the question of what to do with the many perpetrators of crimes committed under the communist regime. Hungary has had an uneasy relationship with transitional justice, swinging back and forth between calls for opening the secret police files, criminal prosecution, and lustration on the one hand, and closing the door on the past on the other. There was a huge controversy about whether or not names of agents should be put online for everybody to see, or they should keep it secret. So they decided eventually otherwise, to keep it secrets, to not put them online. Yes, and there was a wish for getting back the lost chance to expose all the criminals and to punish them. Simply put, crudely put, that was the sort of feeling of hurt that spurred the project, according to Schmidt. Okay. Yeah, so the museum was conceived in a large part to be a public forum for holding the perpetrators of communist crimes accountable, if not judicially, then morally. Oh, and you see the discursive shift, right? Now we are talking about the crimes of communism, and we kind of forgot about the Arrow Cross and the Hungarian National Socialist Party and their own complicity in the crimes and deportations of the Jews and the Roma. Okay, in order for the museum to effectively tell the story of totalitarianism in Hungary for the young generations, the museum's creators believed that it needed to first reach the heart before it reached the minds. In that sense, this moral education that I was just talking about became an important structuring motif for the kind of representational techniques that they chose. So the museum, let me show you a few images about the halls of the museum. This is just so you could see. I'm not even going to comment much. This is just a room for the Arrow Cross. There are two halls devoted to the Nazi occupation and the Arrow Cross Party. The rest of the museum is devoted to communism. And it has a chronological organization, so it goes from 44 up until 1989, when the end is the final room is farewell. Farewell, when the Soviet tanks leave the country, and there is a triumphant video display of Viktor Orbán announcing the Hungarian Republic to a crowd of waiting people. So this is the Arrow Cross, the corridor. So just so just take in the images. The double occupation changing from the Nazi to the Soviet. The two colors. Changing uniforms. How the bad Hungarians did not remain true and changed from Nazi oppressors to communist oppressors. It has its own other discourses, by the way. This is the Gulag room. This is the Soviet party secretary room. This is the room of resistance. You can see the different styles of furniture representing the different classes and the different parts of society, classes of society. This is the dreaded black car symbol. It's an iconic symbol of internation and taking people away to work camps and to this building to be interrogated. This is the room of the clerical punishment or the persecution of the clergy and the churches. This is the room for justice. room for propaganda, of course. Oh, and that's it, sorry. That's a different thing. Oh. Okay, so these are just a few rooms. There's more, but I want you to go. I want you to go and visit because it's an interesting visceral experience. It's very much aimed at moving your emotions, and it elicits an affective response instead of any sort of thought. Because for foreigners, international visitors, even though this is one of the most popular sites, tourist sites there is in Budapest for cultural tourists, there is nothing translated. There's or hardly anything. There's very little information provided, information that is that could be checked, that could be factual, or that is already in historical scholarship. So it's even though the museum says that it aims at giving you the true recent past and in the forms of these halls, the authenticity is itself in question there. So I find it highly problematic. I went with an American friend of mine, and she left the museum without getting to know more about Hungarian 20th century Hungarian history than she did before. It's amazing. Okay. Yep. So this is what I wanted to say about the House of Terror. I wonder about memorial sites in general, though, because I have read comparisons between this memory site and the Washington Holocaust Memorial, which for the same strategy that they use. Although I visited the Washington Memorial and I saw much more information where they want to guide the visitor. They don't leave you like this alone with your cultural images in your head. They don't do that there. At least that was my impression when I went to see. And also, you see, in this kind of place, complicity is out of the question. They closed the discourse so much that they constructed the image of Hungarian freedom base that is a result of the Hungarian citizens fighting of the occupying forces. So and the occupying forces are external. So they produce a space of victimhood, which was overcome after much suffering, after much hardship, and finally culminated in the democratic liberal regime. Okay, so this was 2002 when the museum opened. Okay. Okay, jumping ahead, 2011, Orban is again on government. So he formed a government from 1998 to 2002. And actually, this opening of the museum was amidst of that badly turned out election campaign. So he opened the museum in front of a few thousand supporters, but he was no longer on government. Okay, the next time he managed to win elections and form a government was 2010. Okay, so they immediately started to reconstruct the constitution. Well, why not? And they produced a document which, again, there are legends that the very same guy who was partly responsible for the museum was actually wording it on his laptop sitting on a train. There is not much credibility to this. I don't know. It's a legend. And nevertheless, there are foundation, the founding law, they call it. They don't call it the constitution. It's still not accepted and recognized by the EU, as I can hear. There was a committee that was commissioned to review and analyze the founding law. It's actually available. You can see that they started to popularize it. They made the municipalities buy it, purchase it, and have it. And they actually even say that it always has to be available openly on a table by some fresh cut flowers, just for people to be able to see anytime they go to the town hall. And they prepared a festive edition of the Constitution, which for which they commissioned several artists to paint paintings to illustrate the founding law. And they spent millions on this project. And this is just some of the illustrative paintings that they could come up with. I'm sorry for laughing. This is not a laughing stock. It's very, very serious. But unfortunately, what they do, the way they use the past, is just unbelievable for anybody who is interested in Hungarian history. They concentrated on the glorious events and on the traumatic events of Hungarian history, and they actually went way back to the conquest of the Carpathian Basin, and then they had several very uncritical and very much a cliched narrative of national history that we already know. They did include the Holocaust, though. This is the early communist leader, the Stalinist leader that we had from 1948, which I told you about, till 1953. And painting his image in the, calling this painting the age of Mátyás Rákosi and symbolizing it with the bishop that was a martyr is another message. And you can see a horse attack. This is picturing the 1956 revolution, with the images of the folk wooden box and certain images from the Hungarian history, and putting this ultra-modern policeman on it. This I cannot even dare to interpret. Imre Nagy was prime minister briefly of Hungary between 1953 and 56. So, and this was another case study which is again using, and I would say abusing, Hungarian history. It definitely aims at forging this seamless, officialized national narrative that that is a closed narrative. It doesn't take any variety. It doesn't tell the story of women. It doesn't tell the story of minorities. It doesn't tell the story of peasant people. It tells the story of a fictitious, pure group nation who are the true Hungarians living only in some kind of fantasy. Very interesting fact that they made the day of the founding law into a holiday. Like now we commemorate the day of the founding law, which is April 25th, and they the political elite of the country celebrates it every year. And this was the first year, 2018. I read several press releases that they forgot about it. Of course, they didn't forget. There was just way too many controversy about it. They had to amend the law, I don't know, 6 times in the last 20 months. So I think it was wiser to just forget about that day just this year for the sake of quiet and peace. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Izabella. Very interesting on the use and abuse of culture in this case. And my first question was coming to my mind was, what about the civil society and the cultural sector? What they did, how they mobilize about this is. What about the other associations, group of, because here we see the power of culture, on how you can use culture for the good and for the bad. There is any interaction with other kind of, let's say, groups, intellectuals, associations of social associations, community associations. How do they react to this? How does the cultural sector itself react to this manipulation of culture?
Of course, there's always contradictions and controversies that arise from these projects. Even the illustrations and the festive edition of the founding law elicited counter arguments against it, but you see, what we witness in Hungary is that the civil sector has also started to be devoured and appropriated, and it's done in very, very subtle ways. Suddenly you don't have money to operate somehow. Suddenly people are taken into government positions, into ministries, where they can do this for more money, and that paves the way to very, very slowly, just like a slow cooking frog, chip away here, chip away there, avenues of resistance. And it's what I think is the greatest danger, this closure of the discourse. It's really difficult to even find effective ways of speaking differently, rather than the ratified official way. Right now, I mean, 2 weeks ago, every professor at the University of Budapest complained that they started censoring what words you can put into a lecture title and what words are not so welcome. In this sense, it's either you become radical, but then you start losing your then you lose your funding, or you just wait and see and go with the flow. It's really an interesting slow transition that we are in at the moment.
And what about relations with civil society and movements from outside? Could this work to solve the problem?
Yes. Do you know about the Soros list?
Yeah.
So there are civil societies. There are like international projects that the civil sector is involved in, but apparently no one seems to be able to change the general tendencies. It's the first time I caught the final decade of socialism, but I was still a kid. I never have seen such a way of operating before. Being in the management of the institute where I work, I personally experience daily things that happen and the ways you could counter them, but there's no real way you can. At this point, I'm very pessimistic.
Okay. So, any more reactions from your side? Do you know about this?
What about the schools? Do they teach it in the school? Because the university is strange that there is no movements against that. It's very strange. But what about the schools? Do they teach all these? Do they visit? Do they go with them to the House of Terror? And
I mean, the House of Terror is also an education center. So they organize events and they also are. They are archiving images, pictures. There's a photo archive. You can take a look. It's online. But the website is in Hungarian only. Okay. You don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, which is, we were talking yesterday about actors to culture. I mean, and they are reducing the actors in this sense in a very prepared, strategic way. Mm-hmm. So not everybody knows really what is happening there.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, we are very. I was actually careful to talk about it here because I'm all televised and recorded. So, but yeah, what we have to do is network and create alliances outside of Hungary, in the region, with like-minded organizations and people.
Yeah, for sure. I think European Union is also for that. Hmm? I mean, it's not only. Yeah. So I think that is the opportunities the European Union also offers. And when you are talking about creating a European identity, yeah, it's also that you can support on others when you are no support in your own country. This is about, as you say, networking. We are trying to create something new together, mm-hmm, where when something is not working in a place, it's not only about roads and trains and infrastructures, it's also about freedom and democracy, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I think, yeah, over there, yes, you are behind the column. You take that one, so. Yeah. You present yourself because it's the first time you
Yes.
Talk? Yeah? Who you are?
My name is Clara Fajardo. I'm at the University of Seville. What do you think about activating the Article 7 of the European Treaty in your country? Because they are now controlling all these stranger things that are happening there from the democratic point of view. Freedom, press freedom, and so on. Thank you.
Anyone else wants to say something? We are opening a hot discussion here. Article 7.
Thanks. My question is if this construction of the collective memory is reflects what people think. For example, if you ask to 50-year-old people and you ask them about what do they think, is an absolute construction or it reflects a little bit what people think?
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? You can manage these two questions, and we still have some time. So, if you are worrying about that, okay, go ahead with this.
Well, I mean, if I just think about the freedom of the press, we have, I think, 2 newspapers left that are still functioning and can support themselves, and they are sort of left-wing newspapers. one of the newspapers that went through a lot of reconfiguration in the 20th century, but it was a long-standing. It was like a center-right newspaper. It's finished. It's done. It's not even just the left wing. It's not just the other more far like. There's different left-wing newspapers, but there's not even just the pure left-wing that was done away with, but this other one that I have friends who restarted it just on their own money, and they are raising money to continue the paper. As far as TV stations, that's everybody knows which station is the mouthpiece, and there are, I think there's one left-wing radio station, and there is another commercial station which can afford to put forth some criticism. But even the left-wing TV station, there is this interesting polarized discourse in the media. So you either are this or that, which, I mean, how can people remain loyal to any sort of free thinking when the discourse is this narrow? It's yeah. So yeah. Let's leave it at that at the moment. Yeah. Okay. And the other question, it's a very good question. This is why I'm an oral historian, because I like to actually listen to people who formulate different stories. My answer is yes and no. Yes, because these are very powerful public narratives that do find their ways into the individual ways of remembering. But no, because individuals are still individuals, and they are still part of different communities, different memory groups, which shape their memories in different ways, and also their view on the past is a lot more diversifiable and diverse than the official narrative. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, more reactions from your side. Maybe I could say something about the application of the Article 7, which I have been following very closely. And well, I don't know if you know about the last news that Bulgaria decided to support Hungary, so to avoid the application of this, and also Poland. So I come back to my first thought this morning of the democratic and how democracy can kill democracy in some way, and even the application of the law. My opinion is that, and I think we mentioned that yesterday about the soft power and hard power, and the difference between Europe and other countries applicating this maybe there is an excess of soft power, but when you have the law and you have the tools to avoid something, I would like that some people, some countries, and the European Union will be a little bit more courage. And you cannot blame the European Union at itself, because at the end, the European Union are the countries, and the ministers and prime ministers representing, and they are the ones taking the decision at the end. I think it's about time to give lessons, and we have the tools, to those that doesn't respect European values, and to use the tools we have for that. Otherwise, maybe one day will be too late. That is maybe a personal opinion, it's not an institutional opinion, but as one more student here in this course, because I'm learning a lot, and because of the experience I have in following European policies, I think it's about time to really say Europe works, if we have the tools, we'll use it. If we don't follow the rules, you will be punished. Otherwise, we can have more problems like that with other countries in the future, because we know that there is this possibility, because there is countries that are in the same way, working in the same direction and that are closing together and making networking in that sense, and that is becoming dangerous for us too. So I feel threat, and that is why I ask be strong when applying the law. Okay, that was from my side. Maybe you want to.
Yes, and I would like to add, yes, I agree, but making policies and having them obeyed is faster than transforming people's mentality. So it always kind of lags behind a little bit. Policy making. So people who are in the field of culture, either as actors, like civil organizations, or either theaters, or schools, or educational bodies, they need to be free places. They need to be able to shape the way people relate to themselves, their communities, be those communities national, supranational, whatever. But people need to be so they need to be respected. They need to be kind of steered by these cultural actors and educational bodies to create a mentality that will be conducive to wanting to follow the policies and wanting to form that community. I think, yeah, true, but it's so much harder, and that's why culture and education is so important, because, and Dima said also, like a little bit half-heartedly, yeah, I would say culture and education. Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. Okay, so that's everything for this morning, and we thank Izabella for his presentation, and hopefully things will come back better in the future. Yeah. We'll have elections soon. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have now